Welcome to the Hydroplate Theory Week of Celebration. We're so glad that you've joined us to learn more about Walt Brown and also to more about the Hydroplate Theory. And we're blessed to have a jet fighter pilot here to this name by the name of Bill Wells. And so welcome aboard, Bill. Thanks for joining us for this.
Well, thanks, Brian. I'm really glad to participate in this tribute to a man that I believe that God put into my life over 30 years ago and has been such a tremendous impact in my life and my ability to witness, and with the ultimate goal of bringing the gospel to people that many of them worked with. Walt has been an example to me of grace under fire, a man of great intelligence, the intelligence that God gave him, a humble man, very meticulous. Some have called the Isaac Newton of our age. And he has greatly equipped me to be able to go out into the battlefield of ideas and break through the strongholds that hold many in our society captive. The idea of billions of years, evolution, and how through a misuse of science, people have been convinced that the Bible is not true because of those billions of years of evolution, supposedly.
Yeah.
Um,
And you had a fighter pilot background and the Air Force, but how did you stumble across the hydroplate theory? How did that come into your life?
well, to kind of set the stage, I went to the Air Force Academy, entered in 1976, and Walt Brown had left the academy a year prior to that to go off to the Air War College. I graduated in 1980, and that was the year that Walt was separated from active duty, retired to pursue his work in the hydroplate theory. I went on to become a fighter pilot. I flew the F-16 for about 10 years. I flew the T-38 for about 4 years. And I retired after 20 years. About in 1987 is when I became a Christian. And one of the books that I got exposed to was Ken Ham's The Why, Evolution. That really got my attention, and just how the evidence for both creation and evolution, it's a lot of it's the same evidence. And but there, it's better interpreted in light of a recent creation and the flood. And so that really kind of got my attention. At the time, it was the canopy theory. Uh, uh, Back in 1989, the end of 89, I separated from active duty and moved up to Duluth, Minnesota, where I joined the Air National Guard to continue to fly the F-16. And uh, I also got hired by Northwest Airlines to fly as a commercial airline pilot. And I did those simultaneously until I retired from the Air Force about 10 years later. So, excuse me, my I decided early on in my airline career that I really wanted to be able to be a witness, to share this good news of salvation in Jesus Christ that I had learned and had become very important to me. And for some reason, I wanted to share it with people. And I began to find that the creation evolution issue was a very powerful tool to bringing the gospel to people. But it's also a major stumbling block because a lot of people are convinced that the Bible is not true because of supposedly what science has said about billions of years and evolution. And so that was a big stumbling block that I had to get people past to show them that the Bible is actually true in its history. And so, unfortunately, at the early on, it was the canopy theory, and I would use that with people and just not with much success.
Mm.
Then, in the around 1992, I was off on a trip, but my wife heard about a seminar that Walt was going to be giving up in the Duluth area, at one of the churches up there. She went and heard Walt's explanation of the hydroplate theory, which she'd never heard before. And as she explains it, just the light bulbs just start going off, and it just made so much sense to her. She was so excited about it. She did something that she doesn't normally do, and that's to buy the book of a seminar that she's at. And she bought Walt's book, and at the time, I believe it was the fifth edition.
Mm.
And Um, so she brought it home, and she knew I had a growing interest in the creation evolution issue. Once I started reading Walt's book, The Hydroplate Theory, for me, just so many dots got connected. And I really got excited about it. And I wanted to know more, I had some questions, so I started calling Walt and talking about the uh, the hydroplate theory, discussing some of the commonality that we had. He's a West Point graduate. I was an Air Force Academy graduate, so there's a little inter-service rivalry that started there, jokingly, um, particularly around Army Air Force football games.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Um, but he eventually cross-commissioned into the Air Force because the Air Force wanted him to stay on as a tenured professor.
Sure.
So we started talking, and I started supporting his ministry, and because I just saw the importance of it and how it would help me breach those strongholds
Right.
to ultimately give someone the gospel. And I started bearing a lot of fruit as I learned more and more about the hydroplate theory.
And you would use the hydroplate as you witness to people? Is that right?
Well, I started to,
Yeah.
and that continued for the next about 30 years.
Because
And the
we've been
hydroplate,
Yeah,
go,
we've
go ahead.
been told that nobody cares about the flood model. And I found that, if you can explain 25 major features on Earth and in the solar system, plus to have it make accurate predictions, and now we got NASA discoveries validating it, I think
Right.
that's a pretty robust theory. And to say nobody cares about it, I think that's rather biased to
Well, I would completely disagree with the idea that nobody cares.
Oh, me too.
And it
Yeah.
was the hydroplate theory was my most powerful tool to
Yeah.
ultimately get to the gospel. One is because of the amount of evidence that there is to support it
Yep.
and how it uh, really kind of shakes people up a little bit because everybody seems to think that millions of billions of years is settled science, that evolution is settled science. Then you start talking about the evidence that there's a different way of interpreting that evidence
Exactly.
and that the evidence does not support the billions of years. And this is why. It's one
Exactly.
thing to say it, but it's another to be able to produce evidence to show it.
Yeah.
And so with that, I was able to do it. And it's similar to when I was trained as a fighter pilot, the F-16, I was given training, I was given weapons that were both defensive and offensive in nature. And with the defensive weapons, I could help ensure my survival so that I could use the offensive weapons to complete the mission that I was given. And with the hydroplate theory, I was given very powerful weapons that I came to trust
Mm.
because I saw how successful they were in getting people's attention. Particularly, we're flying over the Grand Canyon,
Mm.
and I can point out the funnel, or
Yeah.
I can tell somebody that was we're flying into San Diego, I could say, oh, by the way, off to the right, it doesn't look like it right now because of the angle, but tomorrow morning when we take off with a real low sun angle, you're going to see something that looks like a great big funnel, and that's the breach point of one of the first two lakes that breached to rapidly form the Grand Canyon. But as we take off out of San Diego, just after the airport opens up, you're going to be looking at the debris field. And that's where 2,800 cubic miles of rock, sediment, sand was deposited by these massive sheets of water, which explains where that material went that the conventional explanation of the Colorado River simply can't explain it. The Gulf of California does not have 2,800 cubic miles of sediment rock, whereas it's spread out over that part of Southern California and Western Arizona. And it's great to be able to pop up at high altitude and be able to see that. And that's one of the perspectives that I have that a lot of people don't, is a lot of my witnessing was done at 35,000 feet.
Wow.
And there are times where as you're sitting in a cockpit of an airliner, things are quiet, not dealing with bad weather or air traffic control delays, things like that. You can talk about various things. Below
Yeah.
10,000 feet, can't talk about anything but flying the airplane. But above that, you can talk about pretty much anything as long as you keep the radio transmissions so you can listen to radio transmissions and properly respond. Anyway, from my perspective, sitting at 35,000 feet, I saw evidences of flood all over the country, not just the Grand Canyon.
Really?
particularly the sink valleys, which Walt describes. And with low sun angles, you see these sink valleys all over the country
Really?
where, uh, because when a valley opens up, now the entrained water in the freshly laid down sediments now has a place to go. It starts running into that newly opened valley or canyon, and it runs in and starts eroding the material. The valley, the material on top starts to sink
Really?
because it's the material underneath that's being eroded. And it's most dramatic in the Grand Canyon, of course.
Sure.
But I could see these sink valleys all over the country and point them out.
Really?
And so to the point where the first officer I flew with, a couple of years before I retired, at age 65 is mandatory retirement for airline pilots. But I spent a good portion of the trip sharing with him about the geology that the flood would have formed. And we got a chance to see the Grand Canyon and the funnel. And at the end of the trip, this geology major looked at me and said, "You know, you just uprooted everything I ever learned about geology."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And he became very open to understanding that the Bible's history is true, starting on page one.
Praise the
And
Lord.
so it's a very important thing, I think, to be able to take this book, the Bible, that you're trying to teach people about Jesus Christ and their need for him, with a literal crucifixion, literal death, literal 3 days in the tomb, literal resurrection. Uh, but if you don't believe what's on page one of these literal days of creation, for
Right.
example, you really don't have a leg to stand on because somebody can pull the rug out from under you. If
Right.
you don't believe what's on page one, why should I believe you about this 3 days in the tomb?
Right.
So anyway, Walt equipped me with weapons, so to speak, that I felt confident going in to the battle and to breach those strongholds and to get people to the point where they'd be open to the gospel. And so, um, to get back to your original question, um, I I started supporting him, and then got a letter from him to the supporters asking for people who would be willing to proofread his work with the upcoming, and I think it was the sixth edition that he was looking for proofreaders. And so I called him up and we chatted about our common backgrounds. I studied engineering mechanics at the academy, a little bit of a common background there as well, although Walt is way beyond me. Beyond
So,
me.
so when he was looking for proofreaders, he just said basically, does anybody want to help me proofread this? Or you banged on
Really?
his.
Yes.
So he would
He
just let
wasn't
he wasn't trying to hide it from anybody. It's like, hey, you guys want to take a look, find the errors in it? Was that more like it, how it was?
absolutely. Not only that, I was surprised that he would actually, somebody of his stature. I mean, as people, we kind of tend to look up at people that are really smart,
Yeah.
and why would he want to listen to me? But he really wanted to hear what I had to say and incorporated some of things that I had into the book.
And so he
Um,
wasn't concerned about somebody taking it and copywriting it before him. He was just letting people
no,
look at it. Yeah.
no. And the Walt was not in this to make money.
Right.
He was in it to serve the Lord. And it was just a tremendous example to me. As I mentioned, grace under fire.
Oh yeah.
The amount of vitriol that he received, not only from people and that are non-believers, but also believers.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a can nobody wants to open, but I think it needs to be opened. I think there needs to be some discussion of there. I mean, this is the theory that we should have been promoting for the last 50 years.
absolutely.
And if we would have been doing that, we'd have so much scientific clout because it seems like every few years there's another astounding prediction that gets validated. And
Right,
yet, it's been kicked to the curb to the the creationists' detriment. And
right.
so, and hopefully, we get more of this into more people find out about it and be impacted like you and like me. The thing that changed me was like when I listened to Walt Brown Week on Real Science Radio, rsr.org, that just colored in all the details, and I've never seen the world the same again. And I think if we can get more people exposed to this, I think that's going to be incredibly powerful weapon, like you say. And so, yeah, praise the Lord with what you've been able to do, and using the earth and the flood to point them to the Bible, and that just opens up the door to salvation. And when people say that it doesn't matter, I really question, what are they really trying to do here? but
Well, those people that say it doesn't matter haven't walked in my shoes. Uh,
they have
and
what?
see, have not walked in my shoes and
Yeah.
seen the power of the hydroplate theory in getting people's attention because it makes so much
Well,
sense.
it
Not
does.
only because it's an understandable the once the fountain started breaching open, everything just follows normal, understandable cause and effect relationships using known physical
Yeah.
laws, chemical processes.
Yeah, it's all logical, and engineers, mechanics, and engineers love this because it deals with forces and mechanisms
Yes,
and energy budgets, and it's all very logical, and yeah, and it's all right there. It's just yeah, it's we just need to get this into the into the mainstream as fast as we can, from my perspective.
you raise an interesting uh, point about this should have been being taught to given to believers for the last 50 years.
Well, yeah,
um, that is when early on when I started studying the creation evolution issue, and like I said, it started with Ken Ham's book. I
yeah,
began to see how the evolutionary side was able to just completely stiff arm and marginalize and put down the creation side,
yep,
which completely stifled the debate,
yep,
kept the information out. Uh, People are given one side of the issue, and that was started to get really frustrating to me. But as I started talking to Walt and learning more about the hydroplate theory, uh, learning more about his background, I began to see that the creation of the big three, what became the big three creationist organizations, were doing the same thing to Walt,
yes,
uh, keeping this information away. And it really, for 30 years, has really bothered me and been
yeah,
an item of prayer, is because I can see these defensive and offensive weapons that work being kept from the people on the battlefield.
yeah,
These creationist organizations, they do a lot of good work, but
yep,
when it comes to the promoting which model of the flood, they are keeping a very powerful tool out of the hands of people like me
yep,
who are out there trying to bring the gospel. I mean, our Jesus didn't send us out to make people creationists. He said, go
right,
out into all the world and preach the gospel to every
right,
creature. But you got to understand the battlefield that you're going out to in the
yep,
particular culture. And this particular culture we live in has been convinced that science has disproved the Bible, the very
right,
Bible you're trying to witness to them from.
right,
So, being able to cut through those barriers,
yes,
uh, the hydroplate theory to me is the most powerful. Yet that's being withheld, and the big, call them the big three, uh, without mentioning them by name, I guess. But the big three creationist organizations have a long history of promoting uh, flood models that have no basis in the Bible.
yes. Well, it's a
And
secular model they just sped up. They took plate tectonics and they sped it up.
well, it's
That's
not just that; it's the canopy theory,
oh,
and
oh
the
yeah,
canopy theory was held as
yeah,
this sacred cow, so to speak.
yeah.
Uh, and anybody that questioned that was seen as questioning the entire creation movement. Uh,
Well, yeah,
and it's it was a a theory that had really no basis in the Bible.
right.
And catastrophic plate tectonics, particularly with your asking for biblical references that support the CPT,
Yeah,
there are none.
right.
It's to me, it's time for these groups to, as they did with the canopy theory, to just quietly walk back away from it. About mid 90s, on a layover in Phoenix, and
Oh,
let him know I was going to be there. And so he came out to the airport, picked me up at a layover there in Phoenix, and so they took me out to dinner and brought me back to their home for a while, and brought me in the backyard, and that's where the Center for Scientific Creation is located.
really?
It's kind of Walt said that people come there visiting, they expect to see big office buildings, and no, it's just this brick building that's cozy and back in the corner of the yard there. It's two rooms. It's just he and Peggy, and so
And
we got a chance to. That's where I first really got a chance to meet him and sit down on and have a nice one-to-one conversation. And we covered a lot of ground. I asked him how he um, first started to pursue the hydroplate theory. And he had just been assigned to the Air Force Academy. He was driving from the east,
Yep.
and his way to try to keep himself awake, he was listening to a radio show that talked about the various sightings of Noah's Ark. And what struck him was the consistency between the reports of people that didn't know each other.
No.
And I was trained as an aircraft accident investigator. One of the things I had to learn was how to interview witnesses, properly handle witness testimony. And one of the things was to make sure they can't talk. Well, these people are separated by geographically as well as by much time. And this is, of course, way before the internet. Uh, People saw these reported these sightings of the Ark, and they're saying the same thing, which lends great credibility to the fact that there's probably something there that looks like this Ark because people that don't know each other are saying the same thing. And so, as he's driving towards the Rampart Mountain Range, at the base of which is the Air Force Academy, he's thinking, okay, this has some credibility. What would it take to float? Where would you get the water to float a boat to the top of those mountains, which is roughly the height of the mountains of Ararat? And then where would the water go? And his starting point was the Bible, the fountains of the great deep. And he started his search for the fountains of the great deep. And another thing we talked about, uh, what I think is really a good way of answering the charge that I've heard from the geologists at some of the other creation organizations that Walt's not a geologist, he's not a professional geologist.
Right. Right.
And I find that very irritating
Yep.
because it really negates one, just the massive capability that God gave Walt to be able to pursue and understand other scientific disciplines.
Right.
Uh, and he recognized he had a deficiency in geology. So when he left, he separated from being ICR Midwest, and he went back to Phoenix, and he decided that he wanted to study geology at ASU
Yep.
under Dr. Robert Dietz.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
the time that Walt spent with Robert Dietz and what they did together, I think is a huge wake-up call to these geologists that are trying to marginalize Walt's knowledge of geology.
Now
Because
for those who don't know who Bob Dietz is, do you want to fill in, his
Robert Dietz,
credentials?
he's now passed away, but he was one of the co-authors of the plate tectonics theory.
Right. He coined the
And
term seafloor spreading. And Walt Brown learned from him.
oh
And
yes,
so for them to say that he doesn't have any geology background, I mean, he learned from the guy who came up with the theory.
well, it's not just Walt sat in a classroom under this guy.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
right.
they they knew each other before Walt showed up at ASU.
Yeah,
But then Walt shows up as a student and he wants to learn geology under
yeah,
Dr. Robert Dietz.
yeah,
And so they developed this working relationship, and it just wasn't in the classroom
yeah,
because uh, Dietz knew that Walt was working on a competing theory,
yep,
the hydroplate theory.
yep,
And so they set up where every Wednesday afternoon they would get together for several hours and discuss their theories.
yep,
And there would be uh, lectures given by visiting geologists, and Dietz would invite Walt to come to that. And they even, and I think this is an important point, not just the relationship that Walt had, this learning relationship that Walt had with one of the co-founders of plate tectonics, but was the joint research project that they entered into.
oh,
And that was discussing, they uh, had developed in their discussions, they were talking about the mid-oceanic ridges and the
yes,
fracture zones.
yes,
And each of them had a, a prediction about what those fracture zones actually looked like.
yes,
And Walt's view was that these are tension cracks,
yep,
uh, and they'd be more V-shaped. And Dietz's view was that they're shear zones formed by shear fractures.
hmm
So very different view of what these fracture zones would look like. And so uh, some research was done on these fracture zones, and it came to find out that they're V-shaped and U-shaped. So the hydroplate theory won. The prediction
Yeah.
of the hydroplate theory won over a prediction of plate tectonics. So
Over and over and over again. Yeah,
yes,
Fred McNabb, he's compiled them. There's 20 accurate predictions out of 58. Over and over, and it just is bizarre how a theory that's making all these accurate predictions, they're not getting the time of day.
so
And
these guys that want to pursue the accelerated miracle boosting version of the plate tectonics theory ought to go take a look at those fracture zones
and
and see.
they should also look at the relationship that Walt had with Bob. They've got competing theories, and yet they're able to discuss their ideas civilly. You
And they
know,
became good friends
yeah,
over.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
They didn't hide each theory from each other and say, no, you can't look at it. And like they're on different teams. And that's basically what we are. I mean, the creationists, we're all on the same team. We all want the truth to get out there. We should be sharing our ideas with everybody. And
yes,
and Walt Brown, he welcomed if he made an error, he wanted to know that so he could correct it. And I mean, the hydroplate theory should be open door for everybody, so we can get everybody on page. And if there are errors, and there may be, we can fix them. But I think the framework for it is pretty solid because it
yes,
makes accurate predictions in a multitude of fields. And
yes, in various parts of the Earth and the solar system.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
So that's that. Not only that, but they found undisturbed sediments in the down inside these fracture zones, and that is not what you would expect if it was a shear surface, but is consistent with their the V-shaped structure.
yeah.
It also explains the magnetic anomalies
Oh,
that are were interpreted as magnetic field reversals, but really it's just increasing and decreasing strengths of magnetic energy as one passes over these fracture zones.
sure.
So, for those that wanted to try to marginalize Walt's ability as a geologist, they need to take a look at his relationship with Robert Dietz and their joint research project, where the hydroplate theory came on top.
Right.
Um, so, uh, yeah, so we got to know each other and through there, and I'd call him on the phone with various aspects of the proofreading. But then came time, I decided that I wanted to have Walt up to Duluth to do a seminar and a debate, if I could
Ooh,
if I could arrange that. Walt had a standing offer for a debate, verbal debate, with all the framework set up and the rules. And I decided that I would really like to sponsor a debate. So um, I'd been following these debates for several years, and I knew that I did not need to try to play any tricks to make my side look better.
right.
Simply provide a way in which a civil discussion of the evidence can be obtained on a stage in a civil manner, and just let the audience hear things that they never heard before.
Yeah,
And I knew I didn't need to do any tricks to try to make Walt look good. So I sought I called up the dean of UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth, explained the debate, the purpose of the debate, the topic, and asked them to give me their best PhD.
wow.
And they handed me off to the dean of what I guess is the dean of the faculty, explained the whole thing, and he recommended a particular professor who was a professor of the philosophy of science.
Sure.
And I was a little disappointed. Well, philosophy of science, why not a geologist or
Yeah,
a biologist or whatever? But I figure, okay, somebody in the philosophy of science is going to be able to accumulate across a broad range of scientific disciplines, not just to
right.
predict them. So, okay.
Yeah,
And one of the debate officers that offers is that the evolutionist is free to put together a panel if he wants
yeah,
across a broad range of topics. So anyway, we got together with this evolutionist, and I sought a moderator from Saint Scholastica.
sure.
Asked again, give me your best PhD to act as a moderator. Went to a neutral building, which in this case was Marshall School. It's a secular private school. 850 seat auditorium,
Yeah.
and widely advertised it. And the place was packed
Oh yeah.
when it came time for the debate. And the debate structure, uh, each side got to speak uninterrupted for 40 minutes. And to me, that was the most important part of the whole
Sure.
night, is
Sure.
because by my estimation, by walking through the crowds and listening to conversations, I think I probably had a probably roughly 50-50 mix
Wow.
of believers and unbelievers.
Yep.
Uh, like Walt said, if we could have packed the place with unbelievers, that'd have been better. Because in that first 40 minutes, they're going to hear things they'd never heard before.
Right.
And then uh, the evolutionist presented his side, and there was a break. And that's where I walked through the crowd listening to what
Oh
people
yeah.
are saying.
Oh yeah.
And then the debate started. The debate was an hour long. Each uh, contestant had 30 minutes of total speaking time. To keep it civil, there was no interrupting. Each individual could speak for 2 minutes, and if he went beyond 2 minutes, he could interrupt
Mm,
or hand off his 2 minute speaking time to the opponent with a question. The
sure.
question had to be answered within 5 seconds, or the other guy could interrupt. Uh, and so
Wow.
all of these rules had time penalties. So if you violated one of the rules, like interrupting, uh, then 1 or 2 minutes would be deducted from your speaking time and given to the other
Oh
guy.
wow. That's a good idea.
I had no way to display that like a scoreboard in
Yeah. Yeah.
in the theater. Unfortunately, all the rules were explained by the moderator, so
Yeah.
everybody knew what was coming. But I had no way of displaying the number of times that the evolutionist was violating what we call the no religion rule. Walt called it the no religion rule, and what that is you could not quote from any religious source. You could not attack a religious position. Just stick to the debate topic, which was, does the scientific evidence favor creation or evolution? And so, 25 minutes into the debate, the evolutionist stood up and said, due to the vicissitudes of this debate, I am now out of time.
He's
And
now
that's
out of
because
what? He's
I
what?
am now out of time. He
Oh.
was out of speaking time because he had violated the no religion rule so many times that each time he violated, time was taken from him and given to Walt.
Yeah.
So by the time, after 25 minutes of what should have been an hour debate, the evolutionist was out of speaking time because
What?
he violated the no religion rule so many times. And so Walt was handed about 30 minutes of uninterrupted speaking time at what should have been a debate.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
he had to kind of scramble to reorient his thinking and just give another lecture on
Wow.
so um,
Do you think that guy did it on purpose because he didn't have an hour to say? I mean, it's a way for him to save face and not have to deal with it. I don't know.
well, one of the things that he did was he put up this list of all these genetically transmitted diseases, and they're really horrible diseases. And what he says, what kind of a loving God would allow this? Well, that's a religious attack. Hello. So
Yeah.
anyway, we uh, we got the opportunity to host Walt at our home for
Oh,
3 days during that
wow.
time because we had a a seminar was also given at the Marshall School because of a big auditorium, and that was for all the local churches. Anybody wanted to come, and
Good.
then the debate was held that night, Saturday night, and then Sunday at our church, Walt also spoke. So we got a chance to host Walt at our home and interact with him there, learn more about he and his ministry.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, Interesting story about uh, one of the things
Well,
he says, well, people when they meet Peggy, they really want to talk to her because she's the more interesting, of the two of us. And he said that, Peggy would catch him just kind of staring off into space, and she knew that he had colliding galaxies going on in his head as he's thinking through all these different
oh yeah.
aspects of
Oh yeah.
what not only what would cause the flood, but the impact,
Right.
the subsequent things that the flood would cause,
Yeah.
and just the sheer brilliance that God gave him in being able to connect all these things.
And it was
Uh,
much more violent than he had first
oh
anticipated.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was fun hosting him and getting to know him that
What year
way.
was that? Do you remember what year that was?
96,
Okay.
September of 96.
How can we get the hydroplate into the culture to impact it more than what it is out right now?
Well, in my view, it starts with the kids, and the information needs to get out. And given the resources and the outreach that the big three creation organizations have, I think this is where it starts. And so, to me, the way to get it to influence our culture and get it on the mainstream is is to have the big creation organizations start to talk about the hydroplate theory, and that's going to get into the minds of the kids, and the kids are going to be able to talk to their friends. And there are two things that need to happen when you equip kids to go off to school, and it's not just kids, it's everybody. But first they need to protect their faith,
Right.
and there's a reason all that armor that we're given in Ephesians 6, all of it's defensive. There's only one offensive weapon. Well, their faith needs to be protected, and they're going away from home. They're going to a different peer group. They've got these professors that have their grades hanging over their heads. There's a lot of pressure to accept the evolutionary view and believe that the Bible's been discredited. There's a lot of pressure to do that. But with the hydroplate theory, kids have the ability to incorporate maybe their parents' young Earth creation views and make it their own because they have a way to defend it. They have the evidence to be able to show people that what, like I said, it's the same evidence, but the interpretation, the old age interpretation doesn't make sense because this is why this isn't this.
Right.
And then they have the ability to show, okay, not only is yours wrong, but here's how it happened. A better
Yep.
way of explaining how it happened that lines
Exactly.
up with the Bible.
Exactly.
And so the first thing that has to happen is the kids have to be able to protect their own faith from
Right.
getting shipwrecked.
Right.
And once they have that, then they have the ability to, with respectful questions, start asking questions about the evidence that's used to support billions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from my own experience, and I think Barna has done some research, and some of the big three have also done uh, polling data to try to figure out why so many kids are leaving their
Oh yeah.
faith when they leave home. And it's primarily the science, I call it a misuse of science, has rendered the Bible irrelevant for today. It's just proving it. And of the issues there, it's the age of the earth and evolution. So, but of those two issues, the age of the earth and evolution, it's the age of the earth that's the more volatile. It's it's the one that people think is the most settled. And I could tell you because I've seen the look many times. You can have a debate with somebody or discussion about uh, problems with the theory of evolution and the fossil record and all that. But then you tell them you think the Earth is about 6,000 years old, and the expression on their faces changes quite dramatically because now they think you're an idiot.
Sure.
And until they start hearing the evidence.
Yeah.
And so, to me, just really being able to defend a young Earth from the evidence,
Yeah.
and that's what Walt Brown's theory does. The hydroplate theory does so well, and it gives it. I know it gives me confidence.
Oh yeah.
It will give kids confidence that actually, well, I guess God was right all along,
Right. Right.
and that the Bible is true from page one, and that it's supported by the evidence.
Right. And I was in a
Equipping,
I was in a debate with a science teacher, and during the Q&A session, he had 25 minutes to grill me, and I had 25 minutes to grill him. And a lot of the questions I could answer with the hydroplate theory. It's all encompassing, and it was really, you're right, it gives you confidence. And we do need to equip the next generation. And when I'm at St. Cloud State and I meet an atheist, it's like, okay, we'll play in your ballpark. Without God, how did life begin? Without God, where did matter come from? And when I talk to really little kids, it's like you want to, there's people that don't believe what God says. They're not on God's side, and you want to be able to figure out who's on what team, and so you just ask them, where did people come from? If they point
Okay.
you to Adam and Eve, they're on God's side. And if
Yeah.
they don't, then they're not on God's side. So at least who you can believe and who you can trust. And with your experience and how it's been very effective on people, linking the world to the Bible, and that opens them up to Jesus Christ. And that's what Mike Snavely's done, with his big, do you know Mike at all? Mike
Oh,
Snavely.
yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what we need. And you guys have blazed the trail for us to follow, and now we need to hand it off to the next generation. Um, so like, do you give creation talks at all? If somebody called in your neighborhood, would you go talk to them at a church or a school or anything like that?
Done at my church. In fact, I just finished up a 16 session course at our
Wow.
church. And in
Yeah.
fact, I called before I started it. I called uh, Peggy
Yeah.
uh, um, and to talk to her. I knew Walt was heading downhill,
Yeah.
and so I called her and she said, "Well, Walt's sleeping right now. Can't talk." I just wanted to let him know that, hey, I'm using your stuff again, Walt.
Praise the
You know,
Lord.
you're going to be the star here
Praise the Lord.
because hydroplate theory is a centerpiece of
Yeah.
it. And I saw Walt 7 years ago, 2018. We were just about to start a trip with Mike Snavely, and we had great lunch with him, good talks, talk about the old, the debate, good old days, and all that. And when we went to say goodbye, we both had tears in our eyes, and I suspect we both knew that this would be the last time this side of heaven that we'd see each other.
Mm,
And it was kind of an emotional deal. And then a few years later, called Peggy and told her that I was doing this seminar. But what a great man for the Lord to put in my life. What an
right.
influence, uh,
Yeah.
great inspiration.
And from that little office, that little building, how he's reached the world, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
he's in heaven, and yet his work is going to continue on. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do whatever I can to get this in front of as many people as possible, so they're equipped to stand up to these ungodly lies. And
Yeah.
thank God that Walt did all that research, and just a tremendous gift to the body of Christ, and that's not being appreciated the way it should be.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
so
I
hopefully
agree.
that's going to change, and it might be from the grassroots up. But yeah, we just have a couple of minutes left. Do you have any parting ideas or thoughts for the people before we go?
Um, well, it's just that you need to know the culture that you're witnessing. You need to know the battlefield. The weapons are going to be thrown at you, and one of the biggest issues is the creation evolution issue,
Right.
and being able to address that in an intelligent way with evidence. Uh, Using the hydroplate theory, for example, is just a tremendous way to show people that the things that have been used to convince them that the Bible's wrong through billions of years of evolution don't really do that. Because if you interpret these evidence within the full range of known physical, chemical laws and processes, the hydroplate theory makes and a young Earth makes a lot more sense.
Oh,
And hence
absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
Bible's correct in its history.
Absolutely. And I look at the world, this is, the world's a mess because there's a battle between God's truth and Satan's lies. And ground zero for that battle is creation versus evolution. And the battleground is our classrooms and the courtrooms. And the
Yeah,
textbooks are the ammo. But we've got the atomic bomb basically with the hydroplate. And that could sway the victory in our way, but we're not equipping our soldiers with the best weapon available.
exactly. And to see them not equipped has just been a frustration for me for 30 years.
Well, we do appreciate you getting it off your chest today, and hopefully that God will use these recordings and these interviews to reach as many people as possible. And everybody out there, you can get the hydroplate theory. If it's not available for Christmas, you can get it at hpt.rsr.org. You can get a PDF of it, and so you can start getting equipped. So thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate it, and may God bless your efforts.
Thank you too, Brian. You too. Thank you.